Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Rotary meeting of Monday, September 27th. We will begin the meeting with the introduction of our guest speaker, and I will hand this over to Howard.
Thanks, Don. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure today to welcome Amanda Conlon as our guest speaker. Amanda has been with the London Regional Children's Museum since 2006, serving as the executive director for the past 8 years. She's an experienced museum professional whose educational background in childhood development, social justice, and pedagogical leadership provide the ideal toolkit for her present role at the museum. Amanda is overseeing the development of the new Children's Museum at 100 Kellogg Lane, and she'll tell us a little bit more about that today. And the new museum will transform it from its present state into an educational and cultural destination. So please join me in welcoming Amanda.
Hello, everyone. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to share with you about the Children's Museum, what we do, why we do it, and then also to talk a little bit about what our future plans are. So the mission of the Children's Museum is to curate powerful play experiences through immersive environments, authentic materials, and meaningful relationships. We're a champion for children. We advocate for their unique perspectives, contributions, and ways of learning. And we do that because we really hope that we will ultimately create a community where children's voices are honored, play is valued, and lives are transformed by a love of learning. The Children's Museum is really a place where children are at the forefront of everything that we do, and it's really important for us to understand and communicate the worth of children as whole people out into the world. We were Canada's first children's museum. So the London Children's Museum was actually developed by Carol Johnston, who just recently passed. She was in her 91st year, and she passed in just at the beginning of this summer. And she visited the Boston Children's Museum and decided that London needed one too. We have pre-COVID, about 95,000 visitors who come through the Children's Museum every year. And then we also serve about 11,000 students in education programs across the region. And we make a $4.5 million contribution to the local economy through direct and indirect expenditures. So the Children's Museum is a pretty big player here in London. We believe very strongly in the power of play. And this past year and a half have been really challenging for everybody, and especially challenging for children. Many children have not had the opportunity to engage in the same kind of play that they do with their peers typically, that we know is really critical for child development. So we know when children play, they are learning. We know that that's their way of processing stress. We know that that's their way of building relationships. And we know that that's the way that they move through understanding the world around them. And so play is a really critical part of what children need in order to feel safe, secure, and healthy in their development. And they need it more than ever now. After spending a year and a half at home, after spending so much time away from school and their peers, we know that children need play in order to help support their healing and recovery. And so the Children's Museum has always been committed to that, but is especially committed to it as we look to the future post-COVID pandemic. So I'll share a little bit about what we do at the Children's Museum. We have 8 hands-on exhibits. We are one of the very few children's museums in the world that have a collection. As a museum, we take that very seriously. So we have 7,000 artifacts in our collection. We have a curator on staff who manages all of those artifacts. And then we make sure that we pull those artifacts out and put them on display or we take them out and have children actually engage with them through our collections interactions. It's really important to help children understand the world around them by understanding their past, and artifacts are a way that we can do that for children in a hands-on way, and we know that that's going to really help to solidify some of the learning that's happening for them. We run education programs both at the Children's Museum and in classrooms. We do digital field trips as well as part of our COVID adjustments. We've started to run digital field trips where we do, just like we're doing here, an interaction with the museum staff delivered right into the classroom or the virtual classroom of students when they were fully online. And we have components of that that are hands-on that we deliver to the school for each child to participate with, or when they were home, they were just interactions with things that they could typically find around the house. We run a program called Museum School, which is a week-long program where students come with their class to the Children's Museum, and the teacher and the Children's Museum educator work together to develop a program for the students with the Children's Museum as their classroom. And then EduKits are sort of combining the collection and the education program together with the opportunity to have children engage in real artifacts and real materials and deliver it in a way that allows them that immersive experience right in their classroom. Then we also run for the general public demonstrations, programs for our early years learners, so those children under the age of 6. We run day camps and birthday parties, lots of outreach into the community, and then play kits where, again, you can take a piece of the Children's Museum and bring them home with you. All of this we have been doing in some capacity for the last 40 some odd years as a Children's Museum. And we've been doing that the bulk of the time at 21 Wharncliffe Road, so in our current location, and we have been able to deliver those services to almost 3 million people. What we had seen though over the last 5 years prior to COVID was a 26% growth in attendance in all of our programs and services. We didn't have the capacity in the Children's Museum to support that kind of visitation. What we were hearing from the community was that we needed a bigger space. And if you've ever visited the Children's Museum, you also know that we needed a bigger parking lot. Our parking lot is very small and we have lots of visitors coming in, and sometimes can be a challenge. So we were really just outgrowing the space, which, you know, for lots of people who came and visited the Children's Museum and understood Wharncliffe Road to be our home, and wondered, oh, I can't believe they're moving. This is actually pretty typical of the Children's Museum. So we started in parks, we moved to a storefront on Dundas Street, and then we moved to London Towers, then we moved to Wharncliffe Road, and now we're looking at moving, and we're moving again to 100 Kellogg Lane. So really, this expansion and growth is just part of the Children's Museum experience. And it's really critical to our future success and our ability to meet the demands. Now, COVID, in the midst of everything, sort of threw a wrench in that plan, because we have been closed. Out of the last, 18 or 19 months, we've been closed for 15 of them. And that's a long time to be closed for. We've been closed for 15 months. We can only open now to the public 25% at 25% capacity. But what we know is that there is a demand for these kinds of spaces. And we know that when we come through the other side of this pandemic, that the Children's Museum is going to be even more important than we were before. So the new Children's Museum is going to give us 35,000 square feet of space, but it's all on one floor, which means we have the opportunity to create a more accessible open concept design, which will allow us to utilize about 18,000 square feet for exhibit space compared to the 10 or 11 that we have now. So a significant increase in the usable exhibit space, and we expect conservatively a growth to about 145,000 visitors. What we know though is that the Children's Museum, as part of the broader destination at 100 Kellogg, is likely to bring in more than 145,000 people. What we want to make sure of when we were designing the new Children's Museum was that we were really encouraging children to interact with themselves, each other, and their peers in a way that allowed them to really use their creativity and their imagination. We wanted to create a space where families could come together and spend some good quality time together, not a space where everybody is running from one thing to the next, but a place where something can really capture your attention and you can slow down and enjoy yourself and learn together. A place where everybody in our community feels safe. A place where they feel welcomed and included and they see themselves reflected. And a place that is not limited to only those who have the financial means to be able to participate. The Children's Museum is meant to be a unique space that is welcoming to all people, regardless of their financial situation. And so making sure that even as we move and we grow, that we're maintaining the accessibility and the subsidized memberships and admissions that allow all community members to experience the Children's Museum. Our design of the new Children's Museum is here. What we will include are a number of exhibits that are playing off of the Children's Museum's past and the nostalgia of what it means to know the Children's Museum in your memory and in your experiences as families, but also grow along with the community. So I'm going to walk you through the exhibits a bit. So the first exhibit is Branching Out, and Branching Out is meant to be a network of trees and tree houses, places where children can climb and explore the natural world. So this is just an artist rendering of what it might look like, and you can see lots of areas to climb underneath and to climb in and really have that autonomy where they can explore in their own way, while still allowing access for the parents to be able to see their children, to make sure that they're safe, and then to create accessibility. The experiences are collaborative between the upper and the lower floor. So we want to make sure that if you're down below, you can participate in the things up top. And if you're up top, you're participating in the things below. We also wanted to make sure that we spoke about, London as a forest city, talking about stewardship, talking about the importance of the forests, and talking about what it means when you build in and around a forest. What's the impact that you have? It also gives us the opportunity to incorporate Indigenous teachings. So when we're looking at big trees, we can talk about, what it means to be connected to the land as well. And so you can see, you can go inside these trees, you can climb up through them, you can climb down around them, and they give children the opportunity to experience things in a way that maybe they don't otherwise have the opportunity to do. It gives lots of perspective. So 21-foot ceilings in our new location, which allows us the opportunity to utilize big, tall spaces and create this sense of feeling really big, which for children they don't often get, and to get a view out over the whole Children's Museum so that they can see a perspective that's very unique to them. Lots of nooks and crannies to be able to play and find areas for quiet time as well, but also for big body movement. The next exhibit is called our Wonder Lab or Discovery Lab. And we have a space here that's full of just materials. It's a place where you can tinker and create, take things apart and put things back together, and use materials that you may not otherwise use at home, or you may not want, or parents may not want their children to be using at home. We hear a lot, glitter, glue, things that, maybe not paint, things that maybe you don't want to have at your kitchen table, but you want your children to participate in, this is the place where you can come and make a mess at the Children's Museum. But it also gives children the opportunity to use real materials, to use real tools, a place where we can teach them how to properly use things and then allow them to build. We need children to understand how to experiment and problem solve, and we need to teach them how to use their hands and connect that through their experience. And so this is a place where they'll be able to do that. So you can see lots of big open shelving where we can house materials, lots of seating where they can work independently or collaboratively with friends or folks they meet at the Children's Museum, and then places for us to be able to display and hang their creations. The next one is community roots. So again, if you visited the Children's Museum, you know that we have a streetscape that is very popular. There is lots about it that helps children to feel really connected to their community. And so what we are doing is taking that streetscape and expanding it and making it a little bit more diverse. So what we're going to be doing is creating individual houses or buildings where they'll be able to participate in whatever the experience is in that building. In the center, which is what you're looking at here, they're going to be able to have this town square where parents can sit and still be participating in the play, but allow their children to explore in their own unique way. So there's a home that's modeled after a heritage home here at Ontario Cottage here in London. There will be a rescue headquarters with a fire station, police officers and paramedics. There's a wellness center with a doctor's office and a dentist's office, a farmer's market where they'll be able to go for collecting fruits and veggies and different food items. And then next to that, there's a home as well in that community root space. So they'll be able to go into the farmer's market, for example, collect that. There's a home that they can go and bring that food back to, and they can play inside there. And then they also can take that into a shop and a market that's there where they can sell the food. Next to that, we have Shoots and Shoots. And Shoots and Shoots is really about agriculture and industry. So what we wanted to try to explain to children is that it was really important for them to understand where their food comes from. You know, so many of them don't understand that much of the food that they get in the grocery store is coming from, you know, a pretty close radius around the city of London. And so this will be a place where they'll be able to see how food grows, how animals are cared for, and then also how it gets processed and ends up in your market. So the main floor of this exhibit will have, you know, the agricultural components with the food and the animals, and then it goes up to the food processing area where it all gets processed and packaged, and then can be sent back down to the little makeshift area below, and then can actually be moved to the market if they want. The other exhibit is one that, again, we similarly have at the Children's Museum currently, and it's about caves and dinosaurs. It's a place where they can dig and unearth things that came before us and better understand that prehistoric world. They can take those materials that they collect and they can do some fossil analyzing in our dig lab. They can climb in our caves and they can explore stalactites and stalagmites and better understand how caves form and the natural world. And then above this is another exhibit that we have similar to the one at the Children's Museum currently, but expanding it out a little bit, where it's really about what came what is out in the world. So beyond the night sky, what is out there in the universe? And so talking about space and talking about stars, using mission control to teach about technology and a way to engage in that what is beyond us, so that children understand that the world is bigger than just their own backyard. Showing them what it would mean and look like and feel like to be in a space station or a space capsule, and then a spot where we can do planetarium shows where we can talk about constellations. And this is a real opportunity for us too to talk about constellations, yes, the scientific components of space, but also to talk about the cultural components of stars. And so many cultures use stars and storytelling to share their stories amongst generations. And that's a really important part of the culture of many folks across the country and across the world. And it's something that we know we can incorporate the culture and the science together to be able to talk about how, and for children to better understand how people may have utilized the stars historically and currently. Then we have Stream, which is our water feature. So new to the Children's Museum, we currently don't have a water feature. And this again gives us the opportunity to talk about the power of water, what it means to connect with water and to steward the water, what it means to care for the world around you, but also how water can work for us and how water creates power, and how we, when we live in a city with water all around us, how we can build on the water and what things we need to consider. So when you're looking at this, you can see it's a big water table, and up above here is a water wheel. So the water kind of flows here, moves the water wheel, and then comes down over the rocks and through the water table. And there's various areas where children can set up and do different activities. This area over on the side here is a space where the flowers are, where you can shoot water at the flowers to create sound. It's really trying to understand the properties of water in a way that help children to really, again, connect to that natural world, connect to the science of things, but also then talking about the storytelling around water and the cultural significance of water. So you can see this is the area that I was talking about, where you can create music, shooting the water. And then to be fun, when you're drying your hands, we created hand dryers that look like this. So you can move them and dry your hands, or you can point them at your friends and blow their hair back if you want. Outside is our rooftop garden. So we have the opportunity at the new location to have about 5,000 square feet of outdoor rooftop space, which is so unique for children to be able to experience. Not all children have had the opportunity to see the city of London from the perspective of a rooftop. And so it'll give us the chance to use wind power and solar power to be able to grow things, to do different activities. And then we have multiple multi-purpose rooms. So places where we can host meetings or events. We can throw our birthday parties in here, and facility rentals. This is another meeting space where we can do education programs as well. Multi-purpose space that's really purpose-built for what we need is something we're really looking forward to. So that is, in a very, very quick nutshell, the Children's Museum. I'm happy to take any questions or answer or hear any comments that anybody has about our plans or the Children's Museum in general.
Yes, Jan.
What is the entire square footage of the new museum?
36,000 square feet, but that doesn't include the mezzanine spaces. So there's some mezzanine space in there at about 6,000 square feet as well.
And Yvonne.
Okay, so I have a question. What is happening with, are you building on to the one you currently have? Or are you closing that one and reopening or building another one?
Yes, so we're closing one that we're currently in, and we're building on the 4th floor at 100 Kellogg Lane. So the old Kellogg factory. It's actually the 4th floor is where they used to make Rice Krispies. So we love the connection to a fun childhood experience.
And my other question is, okay, that sounds so impressive that on what you were just showing and describing, it's very impressive. And I'm just curious to know, do you have any accessibility features that are going to be put in place for people?
So when you say accessibility features, do you mean physical accessibility or do you mean financial accessibility?
All abilities. So like learning, physical, intellectual, say social, so like autism, like myself. Also learning disability, physical disability, and stuff like that, because
absolutely.
Through the AODA and ODA standards.
Yes. So the entire Children's Museum was designed to meet AODA standards, but we went even further than that. It's really important to us that the Children's Museum is accessible to everybody. So I said at the beginning, the Children's Museum is meant to be a place where you feel like you are seen and you feel yourself reflected back in the space. We hear so often, there's not a lot of spaces for children that are theirs, right? And so we wanted to make sure that every child who came in felt like it was theirs. So what we did was make sure that every exhibit has a physical accessibility component to it. So that means regardless of your ability, you can access all of those experiences regardless of where they are at the Children's Museum. So the stream, for example, is designed where you can wheel a chair up to it and you can participate in it just as you would if you were standing beside it. So there's lots of those kinds of components. The learning piece is really, really critical. I'm a teacher by trade, and part of the reason why I wanted to work in the Children's Museum was because it allows us, when we think of learning, it allows us the opportunity to be really creative in the way that we teach. Because we know that kids learn very differently from one another. People, I shouldn't even say kids, because people are people are people. Everybody learns differently. That's not unique to children. We know, though, that you could come to the Children's Museum and you can have experiences that will stay with you, because that experiential learning is something that really is critical for people to remember things. We know that piece is really important. We also know that it's the engagement in like immersive experiences that are going to be the thing that are going to capture the attention of children and then ultimately to create mastery around. We know, though, too, that some children need an environment that is a bit understimulating, right? They need the lights turned down, the sounds dampened a bit. And so what we've done is actually design the space to be able to control for all of those things. And then we can do sensory friendly evenings. We can reduce capacities and work with our friends at Autism Ontario to create an experience for those children who aren't neurodiverse, to be able to come in and have an experience that still feels really, really comfortable for them. And we've also created and are piloting them now at the Children's Museum, these sensory friendly bags. And so what that does is, if you didn't want to come on those special days, but you needed a little bit of extra support, you can take one of these little kits with you, and they have noise dampening headphones. They have light, sunglasses for light blockage. There's all kinds of different ways that in materials in this kit to help prepare a child to come in. So we've tried to be really thoughtful because we know we had this blank canvas. And like I said, we've been around for 40 years. We've been watching and really learning from the families who come in to visit what their needs are. And we spent an awful lot of time talking to people. We created a diversity and accessibility committee that helped with people with lived experience to say, what do you think about this? How would you utilize this space? Is there anything we're not considering? So we tried to be very, very thoughtful about what we've done here.
Jim Swan, you have a question?
Yes. First of all, I think I want to be a kid again, be able to go to the museum. And I recall when Carol and Ann came around with the whole museum in a shoebox, and we've watched it expand. Looking at what is envisioned now, I'm a little curious as to the funding and the support. Is it all in place, or is there still funding to come? Because it looks incredibly ambitious and just a wonderful asset to our community.
It is very ambitious. But we heard loud and clear from the community that this is what they wanted. They wanted it to be ambitious. They wanted it to feel like what they felt London deserved. And I feel really lucky, just to go back to your comment about Anne and Carol, I feel really lucky to have been able to be designing this place with the opportunity to connect with the people who did this first and be able to say, how is this feeling? Is this feeling like it's along the same lines of what you were thinking and hoping for the Children's Museum when you thought of iterations of the Children's Museum? Is this what you kind of imagined? And people have been so generous in sharing their experiences and participating in it that we feel pretty good about the fact that it's part of the growth and evolution of the Children's Museum. As for funding, it started as a $14 million project, and then COVID happened and everything costs much more money now. And so we're sitting at about a $16 million project, which, to be fair, is not that much in terms of inflation if you're looking at what's been happening in the world. We are almost at 12 million secured. So we're doing very, very well, but still in the home stretch. And so looking for support, continuing to look for support, and working with all levels of government and private individuals, foundations, granting bodies, those sorts of things to help get us to that finish line.
A question
I
I
have
had.
a question for Amanda. What's your estimate of opening time with all of this major project?
That's a great question. Had you asked me that 18 months ago, I would have been able to give you a more definitive answer. What I've learned through COVID is that I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring.
It's fluid. It's fluid. Okay.
Exactly. And so we're hopeful that we'll begin construction in 2022, and it'll take about 12 to 18 months from that point to get the two doors open.
Yeah, thanks.
And Malcolm stole my question. Does anyone else have a question?
I do, Don.
Yes, go ahead, Ron.
It's not a question. This is a really pertinent point for me.
Mm.
And I think for a lot of people here in London. I had the good fortune to be able to work with Carol Johnson, a lady who created this whole concept. At the time, I was in charge of special education for the Board of Education here in London. And Carol was working with me on another committee dealing with special needs kids. And we kind of clicked for obvious reasons. And she invited, with a real arm twist, for me to join the board when we got involved with the London Towers. And I've got to say, Amanda, your enthusiasm, your drive, and your vision is a complete compliment to what Carol had in mind. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for saying that. That means an awful lot to me. I feel the same way about being blessed to have had the experience to spend time with her. She was a really spectacular person. So thank you for that. That's one of the highest compliments I can receive.
And we have time for one more question if anybody has one.
So what I had my hand up for was, I know I came in late, it was because I was on another meeting. But I was just curious to know, as you're talking to someone who has a disability and autism, I'm just curious to know, two questions.
Mhm,
First one, what's happening with your old location?
mhm.
And like, when is all that stuff going to be going into the new one, or if
Mhm.
it's still going to be open?
Mhm.
And also, do you envision that you're going to have enough space on the property? Which I have not been, I just moved here last year, so I'm
Okay.
still learning on what London has to offer.
Yeah.
Do you see that there's going to be enough room at Kellogg's Lane for everything?
Yeah. So the first question is, we intend to stay in our current location until the new location opens. So we don't want a city without a children's museum in it if we can help it. And if we know that there will be, some overlap that has to happen. So there may be a closure period. But we are hopeful that it won't be any more than 6 months. So ideally, it's like close these doors, open those doors. 100 Kellogg Lane is the former Kellogg's factory. It is 1 million square feet of space. It is one of the biggest buildings that I have ever personally set foot in. And the Children's Museum, taking that whole 4th floor, because it has those 21-foot ceilings, we have really been able to utilize the space in a way that gives us, even though the footprint isn't actually that much bigger. So the current Children's Museum at Warncliffe Road is about 30,000 square feet. The new location is 36,000 square feet, but we're going from 10 or 11,000 square feet of exhibit space to 18,000 square feet of exhibit space, plus 5,000 square feet of rooftop patio space. So we're adding, just because of the usability of the one floor and because it was a big open concept area, we're able to really design it in a way that lets us do all of the things that we want to do, and purpose build it for our particular needs, where our current location is an old school. So we were pretty confined by the layout of the school. This is just a big, massive open space. So we get to do what we want with it.
I think that is all the time that we have for questions. I would like to thank you, Amanda, for coming out and doing a presentation about the new and improved Children's Museum today. I think it's of great deal of interest. I think we in the Rotary Club are all beyond the age of actually enjoying the Children's Museum ourselves, but we have children, grandchildren, nieces,
You're
nephews,
never
things
too
like.
old to play.
On behalf of the Rotary Club of London, I would like to thank you for presenting today, and in recognition of your presentation, to the Rotary Club of London, a contribution has been made to the Rotary Foundation's Polio Plus campaign, and we will be immunizing 50 infants against polio because of your presentation. Because of you, Rotary is now one step closer to a polio-free world. So thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
I guess a couple of our few announcements, more than a few today. The first announcement is we will be doing a special general meeting of the club next Monday, October the 4th, to review and approve a project proposal from the World Community Service Committee. There'll be an email coming out from Jim Belton this afternoon with more information about that. Next announcement, I think, was on behalf of Rick Coates, who was unable to make it today. Our Environment Day tree planting next week, or this coming Saturday now, is still a go. We had a few people that had to back out because of other commitments. So I believe Rick is looking for at least 5 more volunteers to help with the tree planting. It's not heavy duty work. It helps if you know how to use a shovel. And it's only going to be about 2.5–3 hours on Saturday morning. Rick sent out the link for registration last week. It was also in the COG. So if you are available to help out with the tree planting on Saturday, please sign up and help plant some trees in Hyde Park. And then other announcements, similar to tree planting, the Satellite Club is spearheading 2 park cleanups in October, Cavendish Park on the 5th and Lauren Avenue Park on the 19th. So if you would like to spend an hour, hour and a half out in the fresh air and hanging out with the members of the Rotary Satellite or the Satellite Club and myself, we'll be there and doing a park cleanup on both those dates. And then Diane was unable to make it today. And she says, we are still looking for 3 volunteers for our food bank shift on Wednesday, October the 20th. Once again, about an hour and a half of volunteer work out at the food bank. Just let Diane know if you are available and interested. And then the Satellite Club is restarting or resuming their trivia nights. And the first one will be Spooky Trivia Night on Wednesday, October the 27th at 7 p.m. And registration will open for that, I believe, sometime later today or tomorrow. And the link will be in the COG later this week. And John Dactus, I believe you had a question or you wanted to make an announcement?
Yeah, an announcement if I could, Don.
Yes.
Some of you recognize and have been volunteering in the past or looking forward to volunteering in the future at the Center of Hope. The Salvation Army Canada-wide has come out with a new policy for volunteers and staff and so on for double vaccinations. That won't kick in until the 15th of November, but it follows the rules, I guess, of the ministry and the government, and Salvation Army is making that even to be on property. So anybody who delivers here, anyone who cuts our lawns, they're also looking at that. Those who be doing the kettles this year, the requirement will be to be double vaccinated as well for that. The second part to that is with our hamper Christmas program, we are in desperate need of a empty building. And if any of you know, I recognize there's only 1% vacancy rate right now in London for commercial sized buildings, but we need to set up a distribution center for putting our toy bags together, and we don't have one right now. And the Western Fairgrounds has been in the past at the Agriplex, but again, it's still used for COVID with the hospital. So if anybody of you have any contacts or anybody out in the community who may know of a large enough place, 12,000 square feet, that we could lease for 4 to 6 weeks, just please call me. We're getting a little anxious as we get closer to Christmas and how we're going to get these bags together for the kids. We do serve about 6,500 kids each year. So we're wanting to see if we can get that set up as soon as possible. Thanks.
And are there any other announcements?
Well, Don, John mentioned the kettles, but I will be reaching out to volunteers for the kettle campaign very shortly.
Anyone else with an announcement?
Heather here. I just wanted to confirm, because things have been a bit of a blur since the golf tournament, but it looks like we made around $10,000. So just a huge pat on the back to all that participated, volunteered, donated, golfed, and or did all of the above. So next year will be our 5th annual, and I'll chat with our club president about how that may or may not go. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for taking the lead on that. And that's some money that we did not have in the bank account. So that's wonderful news. Before we close off our meeting, just a few quick reminders. The cocktail hour is Tuesday at 5, coffee clutch Thursday at 10:30. The Rotary Satellite Club is actually not meeting at all in October. They will be spearheading those 2 park cleanups instead. Our board meeting is in 3 weeks' time, or 3 and a bit weeks' time, on October 20th at 5 p.m. And we will be doing that special general meeting next week to review and vote upon the club's the World Community Service project in Mexico. That is it for our meeting this week. A reminder that our Rotary motto for this year is serve to change lives. And thank you, everyone.